So have you ever felt like your digital notes, your sprawling to-do lists, and all those thousands of browser bookmarks are just, well, a massive dead filing cabinet?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is such a universal frustration for so many of us.
Right. You meticulously save these fascinating articles, and you capture complex workflows. You tag everything with perfect color-coded labels, but the system itself has no pulse.
Yeah, exactly. It's essentially this incredibly organized graveyard where all your best intentions and good ideas just go to die.
Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. What if your Notes app wasn't just cold storage? But what if it was actually alive?
That is the exact question we are looking at today. We are exploring a fascinating transcript of a brainstorming session between a highly analytical user and an AI.
And they aren't just figuring out how to set up a standard database with a few basic tables, right? They are engineering an entire philosophical system inside their digital workspace.
They really are. They are taking ancient Greek philosophy, specifically the metaphysical frameworks of Aristotle, and fusing it with modern cybernetics.
Which sounds wild, I know. But they use biological metaphors to map out digital productivity.
And while it sounds incredibly abstract, I mean, the practical application of this is profound.
So our mission today is to uncover how combining these ancient concepts with biological systems can completely transform the way you capture and truly master information.
We're going to walk you through exactly how this user turns static, lifeless digital notes into a living, breathing ecosystem.
Yeah, and what is so surprising to me is that this massive philosophical undertaking starts with this very practical, almost mundane, technical problem.
Right, the user's just trying to figure out how to track the specific operating system of the software tools they are learning.
Like they literally just want a dedicated column in their database for the OS.
But let's look at why this is so critical for true software mastery. If you are a developer trying to master a tool like Docker, that software behaves entirely differently depending on where it lives.
It's totally different.
Yeah, running it on a Windows machine using the Windows subsystem for Linux is completely different from running it natively on a physical Linux server. The commands change, the file paths change, everything.
And even for non-developers, you can think about a tool like Notion itself. Like if you are learning how to build databases on their web app on your laptop, you have all these robust features.
But switch to the mobile app.
Exactly. If you try to do the same thing on the mobile app on your phone, you suddenly find that you lack certain database manipulation features entirely.
So if you don't explicitly track the specific environment where you are learning the tool, you end up building the wrong muscle memory.
You memorize a shortcut that just doesn't exist when you switch devices.
Right, because the environment dictates the behavior. So the user needs to name this database column.
But instead of just calling the drop-down menu operating system like a normal person, they decide to use Aristotelian concepts.
Naturally.
Yeah, naturally. So the user suggests naming the OS column Heil 0. Now, Heil is the ancient Greek philosophical term for pure foundational matter.
Level 0 matter.
It sounds like a fantastic sci-fi concept, but the AI actually corrects the user here.
And this leads to a brilliant distinction about how computers fundamentally work. In Aristotle's metaphysics, Heil is unformed matter. It is the absolute raw physical stuff of the universe.
So if we map that onto a modern computing environment, Heil 0 cannot be the operating system.
Exactly. Heil 0 is the bare metal. It is the physical silicon, the motherboard, the literal aluminum MacBook sitting on your physical desk.
The actual atoms you can touch.
Right, because the operating system is not made of matter. The operating system is a form, what Aristotle called morphe.
It is a layer of logical organization that is imposed upon that raw physical hardware.
The AI also brings up the concept of topos, which is the Greek word for place or space. The OS is the digital space, the bounded arena, where the software gets to live and operate.
Because if you mistakenly label the operating system as Heil 0, you have completely broken the philosophical hierarchy.
You've left yourself no conceptual room to categorize the actual physical hardware.
The AI points this out and suggests terms like substrate, which I love.
It's a great term. In biology, a substrate is the surface or the material on which an organism lives, grows, or obtains its nourishment.
Like a mushroom growing on the substrate of a decaying log.
Exactly. They also discuss the term execution environment, and they ultimately synthesize these ideas into a brilliantly paired naming convention for this database column.
Right, they call it the kinesis substrate.
Kinesis meaning movement, action, or execution, and substrate meaning the foundational environment.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, and why this distinction matters so much to your daily workflow. It is like being a master chef.
Okay, I like where this is going.
The Heil Zero, the hardware, is the physical land you are standing on. It is the literal earth beneath your feet. But the operating system, the substrate, is the environment built on that land.
So the kitchen.
Exactly. Are you standing in a pristine, state-of-the-art commercial kitchen with induction stoves? Or are you out in the woods cooking over a smoky campfire?
Oh, wow, that perfectly captures it.
You can cook the exact same meal, like you can run the same software, but the environment completely dictates your physical workflow.
It dictates the tools within arm's reach, the temperature of the room, and the muscle memory required to chop vegetables.
Right. The substrate dictates the parameters of your kinesis. Your environment controls your movement.
Now, once this user has perfectly defined this exact environment, they immediately run into the next massive challenge of knowledge management.
Because you have this pristine digital kitchen where your tools and workflows live. But how do you bring raw groceries into this pristine kitchen without tracking mud everywhere?
How do you safely introduce wild, unvetted new ideas into a highly structured environment without causing total operational chaos?
Because, the default human behavior is to just dump everything into one place.
We all do it. You find a cool article about a new productivity method and you save it straight to your active to-do list.
Which is a disaster. The user calls their active pipelines chronemics for time-based scheduling and rational praxis for actual daily execution.
So if you dump a raw, unread, 5,000-word article straight into your praxis execution pipeline,
you haven't given yourself a task. You've given yourself a massive research project disguised as a task.
Exactly. You clog the whole system. You overwhelm your active life flow with unrefined data.
Which is the exact failure point of almost every digital productivity system out there.
Because they lack an ontological airlock. They need a buffer zone where the nature of the information can be changed before it enters the ecosystem.
So the user realizes this fatal flaw and creates a brand new staging group in their Notion database. And this is where the naming conventions get incredibly dense.
Almost comically.
They name this buffer zone informulation, raw process as simulation.
It is a remarkably aggressive cybernetic portmanteau.
Okay, I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening to this. I appreciate the philosophy, but raw process is simulation.
It is a lot to take in.
It sounds like a joke you'd make in a college dorm. If I open my phone at 8 in the morning and I see a folder called Informulation, raw process simulation, I'm gonna laugh, close the app, and go get coffee.
Fair enough.
It is just so needlessly dense. Why on earth wouldn't you just name this folder Inbox or Things to Read like every normal productivity app on the planet?
The AI actually helps the user explore the psychology behind this specific language. It comes down to a core principle. The words you use to define your spaces dictate your behavior within those spaces.
Okay, I'm listening.
If you label a folder inbox, consider the psychological baggage attached to that word. What does an inbox imply?
It implies a passive dumping ground. It's the place where my emails pile up until I feel overwhelmed and guilty enough to declare bankruptcy and delete them all.
Exactly. It's a waiting room for chores. Inbox is inherently passive. But Informulation frames this space as an active laboratory. It represents the deliberate transition of raw data, the information or the unformed Heil, into a structured, usable shape.
The formulation, or the morphe. So, information physically transformed into formulation. In formulation.
It shifts your mindset entirely. This is not a waiting room. It is an ontological airlock.
So when you capture a raw, freak of nature idea that you discovered out in the wild, you don't just put it on your to-do list.
No, you seal it in this airlock. You put on your lab coat, so to speak, and you dissect it.
You assimilate the idea by breaking it apart and extracting its core, repeatable value before you ever allow it to touch your calendar.
Which fundamentally changes your psychological relationship to the things you say. You are no longer a digital hoarder just stacking magazines in a corner.
You are actively reverse engineering the things you find.
Right. And to solidify that psychological shift, the user builds a fascinating visual engine to represent this informulation process.
Using standard emojis, right?
Yes, but they deploy them as a functional, interactive roadmap inside their database. These aren't just decorative icons.
They are literal column headers that dictate how an idea moves from a chaotic universe into their structured brain.
The UI reality of this is wild. The user and the AI settle on a sequence of 4 emojis.
Let's walk through it.
On the far left, you have an outer space or galaxy emoji. Next to that is an arrow pointing to the right. In the center is a tornado emoji. far right is a DNA helix emoji with an arrow pointing to the left back towards the tornado.
So the arrows are pointing inward. The visual of the arrows pointing inward is crucial.
It shifts the concept of an inbox from a linear conveyor belt pipeline into a dialectical synthesis.
Let's break down the mechanics of these symbols, starting with the macro perspective on the far left. The outer space emoji, the cosmos.
The cosmos represents the infinite, unformed expanse of the internet and human knowledge. It is the absolute highest, most zoomed-out perspective you can take.
And to scan this infinite space effectively, you actually find those unique, game-changing processes hidden in the noise they talk about adopting the vision of a baby.
Yes, they connect us to the Zen Buddhist concept of Shoshin, which means beginner's mind.
And John Locke's philosophical idea of tabula rasa, the blank slate.
Think about it. When a baby looks at a room, they lack the neurological filters to categorize a wooden object with four legs as a chair.
They don't have a concept of fear.
They simply perceive raw shapes, colors, and physical potential. So in the system, when you are scanning the cosmic ether of the internet for new ideas, you must deliberately suspend your expert filters.
Because if you look at new information strictly as an expert, your brain automatically filters out anything that violates your pre-existing rules.
Precisely.
Let's say you are a die-hard fan of the getting things done method, and you see an article about a bizarre new way to track habits using playing cards.
The expert brain instantly rejects it. It says, well, that's not GTD, that's inefficient.
But the beginner's mind says, wait, let's look at the raw mechanics of this. You have to view the data without prejudice, or you will completely miss the anomalies.
You literally blind yourself to innovation. So that is the macro perspective, the outer space.
Now, jump to the far right side of the visual equation. The micro perspective, represented by the DNA helix. The absolute smallest, most fundamental building block of life.
The DNA represents the fundamental mechanical blueprint of an idea. This is the crucial stage inside that informulation airlock, where you make what the user calls the heuristic choice.
The heuristic choice.
You have isolated the raw idea, you have placed it under a microscope, and you are actively reverse engineering its genetic code.
You are stripping away all the narrative fluff to find the exact mechanical rule that makes the workflow function.
Let's ground this with a concrete example. Say you find a massively viral 5,000-word blog post about the Pomodoro productivity technique.
Oh yeah, full of backstory about tomato timers and Italian history.
Exactly. You don't save the whole article into your active database. You put it in the airlock and you extract the DNA.
And the DNA is simply work for 25 minutes, rest for 5 minutes.
That granular atomic rule is what actually gets saved and categorized. You discard the cosmic noise and keep the genetic code.
So you have the infinite unfiltered cosmos on the left, and the hyper-specific reverse-engineered genetic code on the right.
And then these two opposing forces smash into each other in the center.
The tornado.
The center is the tornado emoji. Because the arrows are pointing inward toward each other, the tornado acts as the collision point.
It is the violent gravitational vortex where massive cosmic potential collides with granular atomic code.
It represents the exact moment of creation. It is the engine turning chaotic, unformed matter into focused kinetic energy.
It's that aha moment when you actually grasp how a wild idea can become a functional tool you can use today.
Right.
And, okay, wait, we have to talk about the absolute mind-blowing double entendre the user creates to name this entire visual sequence.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
They titled this pipeline Baby in Formulation, spelled with a capital F and a capital A in the middle of the word.
At first glance, it seems like it just ties back to the vision of a baby concept we just talked about, using the beginner's mind to look at the cosmos.
But the user points out to the AI that it is a literal pun on baby formula, the synthetic milk substitute.
Think about the depth of that metaphor for a second. Natural breast milk is organic. It is produced seamlessly by nature.
But baby formula is a synthetic marvel of engineering.
Exactly. Scientists take raw external ingredients, break them down in a laboratory setting, and manufacture a completely synthetic nutrient that perfectly mimics organic, life-giving properties.
It is a stunning, layered metaphor for the mechanics of digital knowledge management.
It really is.
When you find a wild idea out on the internet, you can't always just swallow it whole. It's raw. It's ingestible.
You have to take that raw cosmic ingredient, bring it into your digital lab, your formulation airlock, and reverse engineer its DNA.
You are manufacturing a perfectly digestible synthetic nutrient for your digital brain. You are quite literally making baby formula to feed your own mind.
That specific metaphor is what elevates this entire transcript. having a conversation about how to use a software app, and it becomes a deep philosophical exploration into the nature of cognition itself.
Which brings us to the grand overarching title. The AI ultimately bestows upon this user's entire system.
The Cybernetic Soul, an Aristotelian framework for digital mastery.
The Cybernetic Soul? I mean, it sounds like the title of a hardcore sci-fi novel.
It does, but it is literally the framework this person uses to manage their daily chores and projects.
Let's zoom out for a second. Why does this deeply idiosyncratic, highly personal Notion setup matter on a larger scale?
Well, it matters deeply because of the stark contrast it provides to how the vast majority of us operate digitally.
Right. Take a look at the most popular productivity frameworks on the market today. Systems like Getting Things Done, or the PRA method, which stands for Projects, Areas, Resources, and Archives.
They are highly sterile. They are strictly utilitarian.
They are essentially just digital filing cabinets designed to make you a slightly more efficient corporate worker.
They are entirely focused on storing data, organizing folders, and checking boxes. They treat information like dead weight to be managed.
But this user hasn't built a filing cabinet. They have cultivated a garden. They have built an ecosystem.
And for professionals who studied the mind, this transcript is a profound case study. For a philosopher, this is applied metaphysics.
It proves that Aristotle's ancient concepts of matter and form aren't just dusty textbook theories.
Exactly. They can be perfectly functionally mapped onto modern software architecture. Because whether you are looking at the structure of ancient Greek reality or the structure of a relational database, you are just defining how things exist and interact.
Furthermore, for cognitive scientists, this system is a living, breathing model of a theory known as extended cognition.
Extended cognition, right? You're talking about the idea that the human mind doesn't actually stop at the physical boundary of the skull.
Yes, that the tools we use, the physical notebooks we write in, the smartphones in our pockets, and these complex digital databases we build are literally physical extensions of our cognitive processing.
Our memory and our analytical thinking bleed out into our environments. The database isn't just an external object you retrieve things from. It is fundamentally a part of how you think.
The AI connects this phenomenon to a concept developed by Kevin Kelly called the technium.
The core thesis of the technium is that technology is not the opposite of nature. We tend to view technology as this artificial, sterile thing imposing itself on the natural, organic world.
Kelly argued that technology is actually a living, evolutionary extension of biology itself.
Think about it. If humans are a biological product of natural evolution, and humans naturally build digital machines to solve problems,
then those machines are simply the next logical evolutionary branch of the biological process.
Exactly. Information inside these machines behaves exactly like organic matter. It mutates. It requires a specific environment, a substrate to live on.
It needs to be broken down and digested like the baby formula, and it evolves over time.
We are witnessing a systems-level convergence of biology and technology here.
So, reading this transcript, you really have to ask a massive question. Did the AI just humor a really nerdy user who happens to like Greek vocabulary?
Or did the AI actually recognize the fundamental truth here? That our digital machines, our phones, our note-taking apps are no longer just tools, but are literally becoming organic extensions of our own biological minds.
The AI explicitly states in the transcript that it sees a living feedback loop at play.
Right, because the absolute foundational rule of cybernetics is that in a true integrated system, every part affects every other part.
When the user actively treats their database as a living entity, giving ideas an ontological airlock to incubate.
Taking the time to extract the genetic code of an article rather than just hoarding the link.
The AI recognizes the pattern of life. It recognizes that this isn't mere data storage. It is a cybernetic ecology.
The AI didn't humor the user. It synthesized the user's profound intuition into a formal framework.
It really is incredible to think about. We spend so much of our modern lives fighting our digital tools. We feel constantly overwhelmed by the endless influx of open browser tabs, unread newsletters, and uncompleted tasks.
But if we simply change the vocabulary we use to describe these spaces, if we refuse to call it an inbox and start treating it as an incubator, it changes our entire psychological posture.
The vocabulary you choose creates your digital reality. The way you categorize your digital life dictates exactly how you process thoughts.
If you treat your Notes app like a static, dead filing cabinet, your ideas will behave statically. They will gather digital dust and eventually be forgotten.
But if you treat your digital notes as a biological entity, if you clearly define the substrate where they live, if you build a dedicated airlock to study the chaotic energy of the universe.
And you take the meticulous time to reverse engineer the DNA of an idea before you try to execute it.
You transition from just hoarding information to achieving true digital mastery. You build yourself a cybernetic soul.
You move from the realm of mere potentiality into the realm of actuality.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave everyone with today. We spent this time exploring how this one specific user successfully turned their Notion database into a living, breathing extension of their own mind.
They built a literal cybernetic organ to help them process the world. It is a fascinating and highly effective achievement.
It is. But it also raises a genuinely terrifying, provocative question for all of us to mull over as we build our own digital lives.
Okay, what is it?
If our digital databases are no longer just static storage lockers, if they are actively becoming our cybernetic soul and an organic, inseparable extension of our own cognition,
Right.
what happens to our minds when the underlying software platform decides to update its code? What happens when it changes its algorithm and hides your data?
Oh, wow.
Or worst of all, what happens to your extended mind if the company simply goes bankrupt and shuts down the servers? If your mind extends into the machine, who really owns your thoughts?